and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology with Kepler College Tutors. Today we have the honour and privilege of speaking with esteemed astrologer, author and teacher Carol Tebbs. Carol has served the astrological community for over 40 years. She is the former president of Kepler College. She has also served 3 terms as ESA's president and also a co-founder of UWAC. And so thank you so much, Carol, for joining us today. And how are you doing?
Great. So far, great.
Wonderful, wonderful. So at Kepler College, you teach a whopping around 6 or 7 classes, a whole array of classes. And some of the classes that you teach are involved in movement and forecasting classes. So the first class I'd like to talk to today is the introduction to movement. And for any prospective students out there, how would you describe the Introduction to Movement class? And what would you say to potential students who may be thinking of taking the course?
Well, basically, students who have learned to delineate a natal chart, the whole point of movement is the answering the question of who, what, why, when is what we answer. And so it tells us by moving factors of different technologies and different techniques when the natal chart is activated and what specifically in the natal chart is activated that gives us a pretty clear idea of what's happening. I have a PowerPoint. I can show you a few slides on.
Wonderful. Yes.
Basically in all of movement. The key is learning what is moving, how fast is it moving, how long will it activate the natal chart within a 1 degree orb. It's kind of basic.
Yeah.
So in the movement 110 class, we cover the basics. And there are other elective classes that give you even more techniques. But certainly the eclipses, the transits, particularly the outers, solar directions, secondary progressions, and moon declination and relocation. Mm-hmm. I know that's a quick look, but for instance, an example, Hillary Clinton here in 1998, when her father was unfortunately caught.
That was an interesting year for her.
Inappropriate. Yeah, and here are the eclipses going back and forth across her 10th house, 4th house, squaring Uranus, her natal Uranus. So, that's just a general statement, but indeed it's a clue. And so layer 3, I layer 4 techniques to give me the information. Here's another one, natal chart in the center. Now I have the outer planet. Here's Pluto transiting square her natal Mars, Jupiter in the 10th house. How descriptive of a well-distinguished father in transformative problems that are affecting her. Indeed, at the same time, I have, my thing is blocking it there, the solar arc. Let's see, it would have to be, can you see that column? What is opposing the moon?
Yes, Uranus. Yeah, Uranus, moon. Opposite.
Oh, Uranus, solar arc Uranus is opposing her moon. So again, just looking at those two, any astrologer would go, oh, this is really a transformative and upsetting time for you. Yeah, see. So, I could go on and here in the solar arc, her natal sun, her natal Venus, Pluto, have arced to square the natal moon. At the same time, the ascendant in this system is arcing square the Mars, Jupiter. So it said, each technique, it tells you the same story in a different way.
Absolutely, and how tight they are.
So when
partile, 9 degrees, Pluto, Moon, and Venus. So you could see that was a challenging time.
Yeah. So basically, in 1.0, we're on basic learning the basic techniques. And indeed, I would think someone, even though we call them intermediate once they've gone through this class, you can accurately delineate a chart and forecast.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that's such a fantastic example as well that you've shown. So thank you very much for showing that. So you would say a prerequisite for some of these movement classes is certainly a fundamental understanding of the natal chart and synthesis of the natal chart, the basics, the planet aspects. Yeah.
Right. And in a Kepler fundamentals program, generally what people do is they take 101, 102, 103, 104, which is total practicum, and move into movement. So they should be very good at delineating the natal chart. Now we're just adding the one.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I can say for any prospective students out there, I had the privilege of going through your courses as I work my way through 101 all the way through the movement. So I highly recommend these classes, and it really is a treasure trove every week as your mind, it's quite incredible. And how accurate a lot of these techniques put together are. It's so mind-blowing.
In 11A, any class at Kepler that has an A or a B after it, or a C or a D or whatever, that means it's a 5-week class.
Right.
And so 110 is 10 weeks. The 111A and the 112B are more specialty. I get into solar returns, so the traditional techniques. My thought in creating that class was if somebody doesn't ever take a traditional astrology class, at least they have that basic 1 week, intro. If one is never taking a class in mundane astrology, I do a 1 week on mundane intro, Aries ingress, synodic cycles. Just the basics, so that you're at least aware of the topic. If they never take a class in electional astrology, they'll at least have 1 week of how to, if a client wants to plan for a wedding and it's going to be in June of 2022, what would be a good date?
And I think that's the wonderful part of Kepler College, because it's the depth and breadth of the classes and the techniques. So giving students a whole array of techniques, even if they only see it once for a week and then leave it again, but just exposing students, which I appreciated, to a whole array of techniques, and it was beautiful.
The whole point, Callum, is so our students can go to any workshop or conference and walk into any classroom and at least understand the fundamentals of what they're talking about. Obviously 1 week doesn't give a person mastery, but you know what's out there, so that our students coming through the program are planning. They don't start knowing how they're going to practice astrology, what path they're going to follow. So we provide a smorgasbord for them to choose from.
Wonderful.
Pick their path.
And for me personally, I recently graduated, and it's the best college experience I've ever had in my life. And the tutors and the peers are so wonderful. But again, it's just the depth and the breadth, and such a broad range of classes and techniques to, like you say, really help the student pick their own path of where they see themselves going. And it's wonderful. So you also teach a rectification class as well. So
absolutely.
But why, for any students out there, why is rectification important, and why is accuracy so important in astrology?
Well, more and more. Well, first of all, we're in a world community now. In the astrology community, everybody's on the Zoom or GoToMeeting or something. And so, here I am sitting out in the country in Oklahoma, and I have clients all around the world. And what I'm getting at is that our people going into the community, as you are as a professional astrologer, you will have clients who don't have a birth time, or they know, well, it's at 3 p.m. Well, it might be 3 p.m. It might be rounded off. It might be 3:03 or 3:08.
Yeah.
If you don't have an accurate birth time, then when you get to forecasting or even delineating the chart, you can be off in forecasting. You'd be off by a year or two or more. And without a birth time, you don't have houses, you don't have ascendant, descent, you don't have the angles, you don't even have the moon.
No, that's very
The moon moves about 13 plus degrees a day.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have a birth time, we don't even know where your moon is.
So, Carol, you have such a wonderful abundance of experience and wealth of knowledge. So, students would also love to know how you started your astrological journey and where did it all begin?
Well, most people get into astrology because a lot of people have a crossroads in their life and they're confused or they're upset or something, and someone will say, well, why don't you go see an astrologer? And from being in my class, I think you already know this story. I was already teaching school. I already had a master's degree. I was very much into the academics, and my friend, I was going through a very difficult spot in the marriage, and she said, oh, you need to go see an astrologer. And I lived on the outskirts of Los Angeles. And I thought, oh, that's just woo-woo stuff. Finally, I went. And listen, all the astrologer did was ask me three questions. She just did solar arc, counting the number of degrees until something was activated. My midheaven moving to my moon, for instance. Did you have some type of a illness at that time where you needed care from your mother? Yeah, I had my tonsils out and I got to stay home and drink milkshakes. And then she asked, and obviously I knew later after being an astrologer what she did. She counted the number of degrees when the midheaven opposed my Mars father that upset the family. Yeah, we, as a result of Dad getting in a little minor trouble, we relocated cross country. So, and then there was one other question. She asked, what she did was, in a simple way, verify that my chart worked.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm thinking, gee, how do you know that? Then she went on to delineate my chart. And she, amongst other things she talked about, but I had the secondary progressed Venus opposite my Saturn South node, 7th house, relationship issues. But I also had transiting Uranus going back and forth across my ascendant. And she said that, that can be very upsetting, and it's describing your actions and what you've chosen to do. And she leaned forward and looked me straight in the eye and said, what have you done? I thought, my Lord, I need to know what I had done is I had moved out of the house, left my 2 teenage kids with my husband, good man, but, and I moved out. Yeah. I thought, oh my Lord, I need to know how that lady did that.
So for you, that was the pivotal moment of having that.
Yeah, we did eventually get back together, and so everything turned out well. But she just nailed me with effortlessly. So I thought, I have all these degrees, and I couldn't do that.
So how did you begin? Did you start picking up books? Did you go to meetings? How did you get involved in the community?
Good question, because it's what Kepler stands for. Going back to the early 1970s, yes, in Los Angeles, there was the Church of Light. I could have driven in there 30 miles each way in traffic. which I didn't do. It started out with books. You read one book, that answers some questions, but that raises other questions. So you get another book and you read that one. You go, okay, now how do they fit together? And so what happened, you'd learn, but you have gaps.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so what Kepler does is makes it so that the student doesn't have those gaps. That took me lots of learning to fill in.
Wow. We are, I mean, my generation especially is so privileged to have places like Kepler College, because I can't imagine, you know, back in the 70s where, you know, you didn't have the internet, you didn't have that worldwide connection, that you had to either physically move to locations where communities of astrologers were, or, you know, bigger cities and places like that. So my generation doesn't know we're born, because we now have the great advantage and the opportunity to learn from all you astrologers who grew up through that era,
Yes.
and then pass down that wisdom and knowledge to us in Kepler, in a very structured and chronological way, as I did. So the 101, 2, 3 through movement, and then you do other electives. It's not all about the astrology, astronomy, history, great classes. So really just a collective and broad areas of classes. So we are very, very privileged to
well educated. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So we are very fortunate.
Yeah, it took me quite a few years skipping around to get what you have under my belt. The other thing too, living in an outskirt of Los Angeles, I did connect. Well, you know, I went to my first astrology conference,
Mm-hmm.
and I met Lois Rodden, and I met Zip Dobbins, who were Los Angeles people,
Wow.
and I became very good friends with them. And so Zip Dobbins would have something every week at her house, and she had a chapel out back.
Mm-hmm.
And through Los Angeles, those astrologers, they had the major astrologers from around the world. If they were coming through the Southern California, they would be at Zip Dobbins' house. Of course, I was there.
Wow.
You know, you meet the Francoise and Michel Gauquelin. You meet, I mean, all of the famous names.
Wow.
Whose books we read. You're sitting there having tea with them or coffee with them.
I would love to be in a fly on the wall at those conversations. That's really incredible, fantastic.
Yes.
Yes. So as you developed and became an astrologer yourself, like I said in the introduction, you have served 3 terms as president of ESAR, being the president of Kepler College. Explain to me some of the chronology of some of that. How did that process?
Well, being in Los Angeles again, I had connection with the greats, personal friends. I mean, for the rest of my life. Again, Lois and Zip passed away in 2005. But what happened that got me involved in the leadership of the community is ESAR was Julie Mulet was in Ohio at the time. She was the founder of ESAR, but it had there was some shenanigans that went on. A lot of people, the famous astrologers, belonged to ESAR. They dropped out of ESAR, and ESAR got blackballed. Meanwhile, NCGR came into being. And so I took over ESAR. Peggy Lance was first, and then I followed her when it was struggling to get back in the world and get us financially stable again. Let me tell you a funny ESAR story. When I turned the presidency of ESAR after my 3 terms over to Ray Merriman in 1995, we had some money. We were solvent financially, and we had some quite a few $1,000s in silver coins and everything. When Ray says, "Well, show me the books. I mean, it's the new president." And we said, "Well, the silver coins are in a safe at Zip Dobbins' house." "Okay, can you mail them to me?" "Well, we have one little problem. Zip can't remember the combination to the safe. So we had to hire a safe cracker to come in and open the safe so we could get I think it was $4,000 of silver coins so we could ship them to Ray Merriman in Michigan. ESAR's come a long way since those days.
A long way from cracking safers for the treasure trove of silver coins.
Right. We had the money though.
Wonderful. So in all those discussions that you had over the years with, rubbing shoulders with wonderful astrologers, is there any pieces of advice or anything that stood out to you that were told to you that you would like to talk about, or anything that came up?
Well, yes. And then I was at a conference, local conference, and SWAC conference, that's long gone. But Neil Mickelson and I were present. He was president of NCGR and I was president of ESAR at the time. And this is, 1980, late 1980s. And I said, Neil, ESAR has money now. NCGR has lots of membership and people. And AFA, there was a lot of people dropped AFA at the time. There was that's when AFAN got started. And so I said, and AFAN has the public outreach, so why don't we merge together and we can put our own conference aside from AFA? And so that's how I got, obviously Neil and I and, a few others were the founders of UAC. And so when we had that first conference, 2,000 people came to San Diego. Jim Lewis said, oh, nobody's going to come because AFA is 2 weeks later up in Los Angeles. We had 2,000 people come. We had prepared for 300.
Did you have enough chairs?
We were ordering tents. we were booking rooms and hotels adjacent. We hired a shuttle service. I'm telling you, we were scrambling.
You got to sit
again. Yeah, it was like throwing a party and everybody came. You go, what? I mean, internationally.
Yeah.
Europeans, Russian astrologers, Chinese astrologers. I mean, New Zealand, Australia, they all came. Wow.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Carol, so much for joining us today. And again, it's been an honor and a privilege to speak with you. And again, for any students out there, you can look up on the Kepler website, which is keplercollege.org, and have more of the descriptions of the classes and how to sign up and to register. So thank you very much for everyone for tuning in, and we shall see you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.